All right, guys, welcome back. It's been about 2 weeks since I made the last video on the abstract design course. I was hoping to only have maybe like a week interval in between the two, but life makes things busy. So, we're going to jump into week 2 here and some of the things that were discussed in week 2. As always, guys, go check out Sinix Design's channel. Take his classes, brainstorm. They're awesome, all of them. But without further ado, abstract design week 2. So this time we're going to be looking at a few other things. We're going to be looking at shape appeal. And we're going to look at organic versus inorganic shapes. And then the last thing we'll look at is composition. Another way of thinking about composition is your focal hierarchy. Where do we want the viewer to look? Okay, so let's take a look at shape appeal. All right, shape appeal. So I'll start off by saying that Sinix actually has a really good video on this, on shape appeal. But I'll go over a few things here that may be helpful. And remember, we're doing all of this in the context of learning how to make something abstract look cool, look appealing. And once we learn how to do that in the abstract, it makes it very easy to then take those skills and apply them to things that are supposed to be representational. Whether you want to draw a cool looking character or a mech or an environment, all of this stuff applies. So with shape appeal, what we're talking about is the most appealing or trust gained in a shape is when it feels like it is clear and has a singular direction. So if we look at a shape, let me just throw down a shape. Okay, I have this shape here, and its appeal is okay, but does it have a singular direction? Is it clear? It's pretty clear, but in terms of singular direction, what I like to think about is the shape tapering, right? That taper gives a sense of direction to the shape, okay? So keep that in mind that we want tapers, and we can have more than one taper. Let me just back this up. Oops. We can have more than one taper. For example, we can have a shape that's something like this. And then we have our tapering shape. We can have maybe like a triangular with that many tapers, something along those lines, right? But we want to avoid this as a shape. It's chaotic. The angles are acute, right? This is a acute angle. This is a acute angle. And it's not that you can never have any acute angles, but we want to be careful with them because they're kind of like hard stops, and they also they kind of have an aggressive thing to them. And with shapes, we want them to be as appealing as possible, and shapes are appealing when they're comfortable, right? And something that's spiky doesn't usually give the connotation of comfort, right? So you're kind of balancing these two things where you want the tapering, right? You want things to taper, but at the same time, you don't want a bunch of spikiness. So keep that in mind. One way that is, well, let me talk about this first. Obtuse versus acute angles. Our vision flows more easily through obtuse, open angles, and it tends to get stuck in acute angles. And we want the shape to flow. We want one shape to be able to flow into another, right? Whereas it's a lot harder to achieve that with something that is spiky, right? This one hopefully looks a little bit more appealing and the shapes are flowing more so than this example, okay? We want to compose our shapes out of an alphabet. I like to think of it as an alphabet of mark making. Our C and our S and our straight, our C curves, our S curves, and our straights. So instead of like trying to make a very complex line like that, we want to keep it simple with our mark making. So really, and I mentioned this in the previous video, that if you can get into the habit of having C curves, S curves, and straights in your shapes, then it makes it a lot easier to compose a shape and even to compose a drawing as a whole. Not doing this is kind of like trying to write an essay or write a novel and not really have a great grasp of the alphabet. So by reducing it to these three types of mark makings, these C curves, these S curves, and these straights, it just kind of takes off some of the mental load of deciding what is the next mark that I need to make. And in general, they're going to look a lot, things are going to look a lot better and look like more confident when you're just relying on these three types of marks that you can make. Next thing to keep in mind is make sure to avoid 90-degree angles. Now, that doesn't mean that you can never have a 90-degree angle, but you want to be very intentional when you put in a 90-degree angle, because a 90-degree angle, kind of similar to the acute sharp angles, is going to stop the flow of something. Now, a good example of this is if I were to draw a gun, right? This flat 90-degree angle tells me like this is where this stops. Maybe you don't want to be on the other end of this thing, right? But if I drew another gun and I had like something like that, this doesn't seem as intimidating, right? So having that hard stop of the 90-degree angle can be used in certain circumstances if you want the flow of a shape to stop suddenly. So in organic forms, you're very rarely going to be using 90-degree angles, but if you're doing something more industrial, potentially like a mech or a vehicle or a gun or some other asset, then it makes a little bit more sense to have the 90 degrees. But for our purposes, let's really make sure that we watch out for 90-degree angles when we're drawing. Now, how do we practice this shape appeal? And this is something I kind of came up with on my own after watching some of the Sinix videos. And that is just to try to make appealing shapes or graffiti shapes out of the letters of the alphabet. So this is a good way to practice. So if I try to do an A, maybe I'm something like this. And I can have like a B. Now, I'll do this two ways. I can have a B where I'm very controlled, like that. That doesn't have as much shape appeal if I did something like this. You know, like that's a little bit more interesting. Now this curve right here is a little messed up, but you kind of get the idea, right? We want to try to practice our CS and straights, our CS curves and our straights, along with the ideas that we are practicing with regards to shape appeal. So if you can make these like graffiti type bubble letters, that can be really helpful in regards to developing your ability to create appealing shapes. Now with this E, you can see that there's a little bit of opportunity here for big, medium, small. I mean, this part of the E can be the big, this could be the small, and this could be the medium. And maybe I want to accentuate that even more to make the shape more appealing. But give that a try. Go through the alphabet and just try to make these appealing shapes. Try to make it obtuse. Try to make the shapes flowing and give them a sense of direction. All right. So that's shape appeal. Now let's take a look at organic versus inorganic shapes. And this was actually pretty eye-opening for me the first time I heard about this. So an inorganic shape, let's say organic v inorganic. So an inorganic shape is going to have, it's going to be structural. It's going to be easy to recognize. It's going to have symmetry. Oh, spelled that wrong. And you'll see more 90-degree movements. Okay? So these are the things we want to look out for when we're doing something that is inorganic. Let's look at some examples of that. So our basic primitives of shapes are all going to be I don't want an oval. Our basic shapes are all going to have an inorganic nature to them because they are symmetrical. And of course, with the square, we're going to have 90-degree angles. They're all easily recognized, and they all have a certain amount of structure to them. Now, if I wanted to make them organic, I would look at things like imperfection. Why can't I spell? Unexpected. And unbalanced in terms of weight. Okay. So let's just take what we have here and let's make it a little bit more organic. So if I have a circle and I come down here and I want to make it a little bit more organic, maybe one curve will be like this, but then another curve will be like that. Already this is a more organic shape, right? If I want to do the same with the triangle, maybe instead of having straight lines, I'll have some of them curved And already that's a little bit more organic. Same thing with the square. If we just simply tilt things, we're getting more organic. We can push this even further. Let's see. Let me just make this a little bit smaller. And this is going to be, maybe my organic circle has now just become a blob, right? My triangle, still triangular. I have my 1, 2, 3 points, and then my square. Okay, so this is kind of like a continuum. Now let's look at this a different way. And this is where it becomes really interesting. Let's say we are drawing a shape that looks something like this. This is like a banister, you know, like on stairs or something. Notice that the pinch points where they come together, oops, that wasn't drawn very well. It kind of creates these areas of weakness, right? Like if you're trying to break this, you wouldn't kick here, you would kick in here, right? Imagining that somebody's gonna like kick this. But what if we did this? What if we offset the curves? And I will connect these so it's a little bit more, makes a little bit more sense here. Okay. Now these are kind of on an angle. And what you'll notice is that organic things tend to not be like this and tend to be more like this. Okay. So really, even when you're drawing like the figure, let's say I'm trying to draw the figure and let's say I'm trying to draw it from the side, right? I can have the spine, I can have the front of the pelvis, I can have the buttock, I can have the thigh, and then I can have the calf. And you can see how it does this like zigzag pattern instead of things being perfectly lined up, right? So if I just finish this off, he's got kind of a big back here. Let me fix that. Right. Kind of has this natural sway to the body. I was trying to do it with the arms, but I'm a little constrained. So same thing with the arms, right? So you have your shoulder, you have your tricep, you have your bicep, you have your forearm, okay? And the hand comes down here. So you get the idea. When we're doing organic things, we want things offset, we want things unbalanced. Also notice I kept the apex of this curve, these curves kind of in the center, but that's another area where we can add some more organic nature to what we're making. And this is still kind of hard for me to do and talk about at the same time. Okay, so we kind of have this this form that we can create that looks a little bit more organic than if I just went, you know. So keep that in mind, these offsetting curves. There's a lot of magic in that. It's very powerful. Okay. All right, the last thing that we are going to look at in this area is composition. So composition is all about composing focal interest. Focal points are created through contrast and hierarchy. The main focal point should be clearly identifiable and create no confusion. Be intentional with focal points, and things like slowing down your tempo, adding more details, like the density of details increases, or a higher contrast naturally creates focal points. So again, if I'm just doodling here and I draw some shapes and then I get in here and I go like this, boom, I automatically have a focal point, right? Maybe I want another focal point like over here. I automatically have a secondary focal point. Now, it's really important with your focal points that there is that hierarchy, right? So I may want to add a little bit more here, a little bit more contrast here, so that the viewer knows I want you to look at this one first and then this one second. We usually want to have, you can have one focal point. You can have a secondary and then a tertiary. Sometimes having the third focal point is nice. Let's say that I have another focal point and it's just like some kind of object over here, but it's obviously not taking up as much attention as the other two. And then let's get rid of these. And this is my third. Okay. This creates a triangle. And the triangle is nice. Having these three focal points is nice. Maybe I should do this triangle a different way. Make it a little, stand out a little bit more. This triangle is nice because it keeps the viewer's vision moving. You start with 1, you go to 2, you go to 3, you go back to 1. And this movement around your illustration, around your piece of art, keeps the viewer's attention for a longer period of time. It makes it more interesting to look at. So whether you decide to have 1, 2, or 3 focal points, or even more, keep that in mind. I think when you get past 3, your artwork can get a little bit busy. You want to push things a little bit back into the background at some point. So keep that in mind. Not too many focal points. Okay, so we've gone over this instruction that I received during this class for week 2. We talked about shape appeal, organic versus inorganic shapes, and composition. And now to put these things into practice, there are a few things that you can do. Well, maybe 2 things. Let's see. So the first thing is to, let's say that this is homework. The first thing you can do is look at other artists' work and see if you can't find, sorry, let me write this here. See if you can't find these things in their work, especially when it comes to focal points. So this is, maybe we have, almost always when we have a face, we have focal points around the eyes. Maybe these butterflies could be focal points. But look at another artist's work and then recreate that work as an abstract with similar focal points and color palette. So if I was going to redo this one, I would, not try to make it representational, but maybe I'd have a blob here in the center with some dark masses kind of representing the eyes. And I'd be using this cyan and what would you call that? Like fuchsia, this hot pink palette, and see if you can't recreate other artists' artwork as an abstract. So that's a really good practice. I saw some of the other students in the class do it. Like I said, I didn't get a chance to do it myself, but it's pretty cool. The next thing to do is to just work on automatic drawing with an emphasis on focal points. Maybe I got my focal point here and another one here. One thing to keep in mind is that you don't want to have your focal points out on the edge of things, because that just pushes the viewer out to the edge of the composition, and you kind of want to keep them in the composition. The next thing that you could do on top of that is that you could actually use a secondary color to emphasize those focal points, right? So that would be the homework and practice. Look at other artists' work and try to abstract their work with respect to the focal points and color palette. And then do some more automatic drawings, but now using what we've learned with regards to shape appeal, inorganic and organic shapes, and composition. And now you have a few new flags. And remember from the last one, a flag is something that you just want to look out for. So I will write down the flags. And just being aware of this alone will improve the quality of whatever art you make, whether it is abstract or representational. So we have shape hierarchy. We have tension, which is the shape hierarchy of negative space, right? Tangents. Now we're adding shape appeal. And then composition and focal interest. So as you're creating something, and I highly recommend that you work with the abstract, you work with the automatic drawing. Take heed of these things. Do I have big, medium, small? Do I have appealing spacing between the objects in my image? Do I have any tangents? Are my shapes appealing, meaning that they are obtuse, that they have directionality, that they flow? And then, is there focal interest? If you can do these things, it'll, like I said, it'll make everything automatically better. So give this stuff a try. And if you have any questions, let me know. Again, I'm sharing this as a way of teaching. Or I'm sorry, of course I'm teaching. I'm sharing this as a way of learning. I'm learning through teaching. So I don't have it perfectly. Maybe there's something I missed that you're like, hey, what about this thing? Please let me know. That's perfectly fine. But hopefully this is useful, and I hope to do week 3 where we will start to get into actual painting. And this was very useful for me because it helped me to overcome my fear of digital painting and get comfortable with making gradation and creating the idea form. So next week we'll look at doing some basic painting, but we're just using grayscale, okay? But we're going to be practicing all of these things: shape hierarchy, tension, tangent, shape appeal, composition, and focal interest, all while we are painting something that's abstract in grayscale. All right, I hope this video was useful for you. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you next time.